So the assumptions we're making about the aggregate production function are the key drivers behind the predictions of this model. And so it's very much an artifact, or the predictions of this model are very much an artifact of this production function that we've chosen, or the assumptions behind this production function that we've chosen. So the slides go over an example production function that has these features, just so we can visualize what's happening. So in this case, again, we forgot about human capital. We didn't forget about it, we just left it out. And we're assuming our production function has kind of this form here. And so the slides, basically, let's fix capital at 9 and just think about how output varies when we change labor. And so the slides go through, if we fix this at 9, just goes through different amounts of labor and graphs this production function out. And we can do the same thing, though we'll just do it without doing all the math behind it. We're just plugging in 9 for k and then starting at 0, where output would be 0, and then, well, what's this number over here if this is 9 and this is 1, and then this is 2, and then this is 3, holding this at 9 the whole time. Well, what's going to happen here, we have output on this, so this is our production function, our aggregate production function. We have units of labor here. And if we think about what our production function is going to look like, if we did the math, we get a production function that looks like this. So this function, this is what it looks like. And so notice the slope, as we add more units of labor, output is going up, but it's going up at a decreasing rate. That's that diminishing marginal product of labor. So the marginal product of labor is going to be the slope of this production function, because we're holding capital constant and just changing labor. And so if we looked at that slope, and we want to draw out that slope, I'm going to try to draw it on this same graph. So this is the marginal product of labor, the average product of labor. So I can think about it as output again. We're thinking about this marginal product of labor is decreasing over time. And we can see that because the slope of this production function is decreasing. And the marginal product of labor is the slope of this production function because we're holding capital constant. And this marginal product of labor is kind of dragging down this average product of labor. So these are kind of the characteristics of the production functions that we're working with in this neoclassical growth theory. So now let's talk about the predictions, and they're all going to come from these assumptions that we've been making about the production function. So let's cover the key predictions of this neoclassical growth model, under those assumptions we made about the aggregate production function. So let's first think about if the labor force goes up. What does that mean? Well, it means output goes up, which means GDP goes up. But because of diminishing marginal returns, GDP per capita is actually falling. So if we fix capital and just increase the labor force, that's going to increase GDP, but GDP per capita is actually going to start to go down. The second the second prediction is if we increase capital, then GDP is going to go up, and GDP per capita is also going to go up, but GDP per capita is going to go up at a decreasing rate. So the increase in the GDP per capita you get from increasing your capital stock is going to start to go down as you add more and more capital. So the third prediction, if you increase L and K, Well, GDP is going to go up, but GDP per capita stays constant. So the key here to get kind of sustained long-run growth, there's not many options here, right? I mean, increasing the labor force isn't going to do it. Increasing capital stock and the labor force, so capital, you can think of human capital or physical capital, is not going to really increase GDP per capita. Increasing the capital stock will increase GDP per capita, but at a decreasing rate. And so the key thing here is an increase in technology. But the problem with this theory is we've kind of assumed that technology is this exogenous thing that affects the production function. So all the kind of sustained economic growth we're getting, that we're seeing, is only due to just changes in technology, which is causing changes in productivity. So that's kind of what this neoclassical growth theory is about. So let's take a look at some newer kind of endogenous growth theories where we can think of maybe technology is an endogenous, is something that happens within the model, or is endogenous.